Hello and welcome back to Reduced to TV, and today we have the first video in our new series, Terrace Tales, where we speak to real fans from around the globe and hear stories for their footballing culture. Today, we have Jose David Correa, who joins us all the way from Bogota, Colombia. Jose, welcome.
Hello, Regista. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here. And let's get started.
So, Jose, which Colombian team do you support?
So, I don't really support wholeheartedly one Colombian team. For instance, when they all go to Libertadores or Sudamericana, I usually support them all because I want my teams from here to win, regardless of their name or their color. I wasn't really brought up in a football family, so football is something I kind of got into myself rather than my parents taking me to the stadium or something like that. However, I do have preference for certain teams. For instance, I like Bucaramanga. It's the team from the city my part of my family is from. Uh, and I do like the teams that are from my city, which are Millonarios and Santa Fe. I usually want the cops to come to the city, but yeah. So my family didn't really bring me up to become a football fan of a particular club. And yeah, so in the league, for instance, I also tend to support the underdogs, because we all like the underdogs. And yeah,
So, if you don't support a Colombian team, is there any other team which you follow at all?
and so my favorite team in Europe, and I would say above all, is Juventus club, of course, because when it comes to international football, of course, Colombia is above all for me. But when it comes to international to clubs and Europe, I would say Juventus because I mean I fell in love with the reason I fell in love with football was Italian football and the Italian players I just mentioned, and watching the 2003 season on YouTube, reels or those videos you would watch when you were a kid, watching Del Piero, Nedved, all these players, they really made me fall in love with Juventus, and that's the team I support. Also, when we would discuss about football with friends, I would always defend Juventus and in general Italian teams. I really like Italian football. I think it's very similar in a way to culturally to South American football, and yeah, it's how fans live the football, not necessarily tactically, because of course we are far behind, but the way tifosis and fans as a whole live football in Italy is very similar to how people live football in South America, and yes.
Now, that's a very interesting point you make, Jose, as historically the Italians introduced football to some of the South American nations. So it's interesting to see all these years later that the footballing culture still resonates with South Americans like yourself. Now, back to the Colombian game. Is there any players we should be keeping our eye on?
So I would say there are many good players to watch out for the future. Uh, Probably the biggest name in Colombian football right now is Duan Vergara. He plays for America de Cali, who were just crowned champions a few weeks ago in December. And he was one of their best players. Everybody was asking, so he would get a call up from the national team. He's already there are rumors he will go to Brazilian football. There are rumors he will go to Argentinian football. He could even maybe make the step to Europe. So let's see what happens with him. Harlan Barrera, for instance, he plays for Nacional, is another big name. But one that he kind of flopped, but I really liked him, was Miguel Borja. He he was very important to the Libertadores Atlético Nacional won in 2016. However, he did go to Brazil. He didn't succeed there, and then he went back to junior here in Colombia, and he is performing rather well. He scored yesterday, as a matter of fact, against Medellin for the cup, and so yeah. I would think those three that are currently playing in Colombia are really interesting names. There are other players that aren't in Colombia, but to me are very interesting. Wilker Fariñez, he's not Colombian, he's Venezuelan. To me, he's one of the best goalkeepers I've seen. However, he's very small. He currently plays for Lens in France. He's the second goalkeeper, and I think they're wasting him because he's such a talented player. He's such a talented goalkeeper. He's a wall. However, he's not too. He's not very tall. He is like 180, not 180. He's 176. He's not very tall for a goalkeeper. So I don't think he will make it in Europe because that's something you need to feel the height usually. But I think if he comes back to South America, he will be an important name down here. Carrascal, for instance, is another important Colombian player right now. He plays for River. He he is already there are rumors he could go to Roma, for instance. So I think you will be listening from him, and he's very young too. And Campuzano, who plays for Boca, also he's a promising player. And finally, maybe Cucho Hernandez, who is playing in Spain. He's very very young, and I think he has a bright future ahead. Hopefully, he will deliver.
So I'd like to dig a little bit further into yourself not supporting a Colombian team, as you alluded to earlier. Now, why do you think Colombians don't get behind their local teams like the majority of us Europeans do? And secondly, is this a negative for Colombian football?
So I can only speak from Colombia, but I think it's really negative to see that many people like me, for instance, are not attracted or were not initially attracted to Colombian football at first, and it's worrying for the business in general, and it should be more worrying for the league, that people are looking abroad to find clubs to support and not local clubs. And so there are many reasons this is happening, I believe. Uh, First of all, we cannot take anything away from Europe. They have great marketing. For instance, this whole Champions League mystic ambience they have created. Their marketing is just great, and the fact they take South American football stars to play in Europe also drags the attention towards there. For instance, if you look at James, which I will speak about later also, if you look at James, many people are watching Everton, which, just a few years ago was a mediocre mid-table team that never succeeded, but it never really did that well. Everton a few years ago, but right now everyone has their eyes on Everton in Colombia. So the fact that they take so many football stars from here to Europe draws attention to European football. And the quality of the teams, it's undeniable. In Europe, they have better teams. It's sad to see that South American teams sometimes can't even beat in the Club World Cup teams from Asia or from Africa. I remember Atlético Nacional got knocked out by Kashima, a Japanese team nobody knew of, but that it's such a shame. River Plate a few years ago failed to make it to the Club World Cup final, and I mean the reason there is a Club World Cup is to watch basically South America versus Europe, but the level here has dropped so much because of bad administration, in general. But yeah, so in Colombia at least, there aren't proper football stadiums. Uh, I think that's very important. I think the only proper football stadium there is, I believe, is was built for the team Union Magdalena, that it's in the second division. The rest of them were adapted because they used to have tracks around them, but they aren't really comfortable stadiums. They are all public stadiums. No team, yeah, there's just one team with a private stadium, which is Deportivo Cali. That team also has a proper football stadium. So but but there isn't like it isn't comfortable to go to the stadium. It isn't necessarily a nice experience. Uh, and of course, on safety is very important. When I was growing up, when I was a little kid, my parents, uh, no person in their mind would take their children to watch a football game because barras bravas, they would get crazy, they would throw chairs into the ground, they would destroy the stadium. So for instance, as a kid, I was never taken to a stadium because it was a dangerous experience. When you look at England, for instance, you see kids going to the stadium. That image is sadly not that common here. And there's also a lot of violence in the street. I remember they killed a fan. This really struck me one day because they killed a fan of a team that isn't even that polarizing. Atletico Huila. They killed a fan because he wasn't even a fan. He had just had a cap, like of Deportivo Huila, and they killed him. And if you can't walk in the streets safely with your favorite team's shirt, uh, what are you doing? Like, there's no way you're gonna want to support any of a team here if it's dangerous to support it. For instance, as a kid, I used to have shirts of some football teams here, but I wasn't allowed to wear them because it's dangerous. Someone might do something to you, and there's a little bit of rejection to that violent culture, and people then, okay, if I can support teams here, I might as well support teams in Europe. Also, there is a lack of long-term projects. I think this is also very tied to the stadium issue because, you know, uh, if teams are not willing to construct a stadium, it shows there isn't also a willingness to build long-term projects. Stadiums are proven to bring success to football clubs in the long term, and there are no incentives for the newest football stars to remain at the clubs. So if Millonarios has a good player, he's uh, unavoidably going to go to Nacional, who is the better team, or he's going to go to Boca in Argentina, or to River in Argentina, or to a mid-table team in Spain or Italy or England. So there isn't really um, football stars down here that last uh, much time. So you don't go to the stadium as maybe you did in the 90s to watch El Pibe play for Junior, or watch Chilabert in Vélez, or watch all these football stars that remained here a bit more. But you know you're not gonna watch some random guy who can't control a ball. So yeah. Also, I would say the league system is crooked. For instance, this is really weird to explain, but in Colombia, I'm sorry for the dogs, but in Colombia, wait a minute, I paused the video and it started again. So in Colombia, for instance, the relegation system is very, very complicated. Just to explain, here we don't have a yearly we don't have a yearly competition tournament like in European countries, but we have two tournaments per year. But when it comes to relegation doesn't judge you for your performance on a semester, meaning on a single season, but it judges you on the performance of the last 3 semesters, and you accumulate points in a separate table, and the one that finishes that year or that semester at the bottom of that table is the one that is going down. And this is obviously intended to maintain the big clubs safe, because they are the ones that bring in the money. Millonarios, for instance, these last 6 months played terribly. They lost almost every game, and they were almost relegated. But like in a normal relegation system, they would have been almost relegated. But since here it's so super crooked, they wouldn't have been relegated. And so, in that sense, teams are not really they are not really valued, or they don't really stand a chance necessarily based on their performance of the past season, but on the performance of their last 3 seasons. For instance, a team that is sitting in eighth position could still be at the risk of getting relegated. So there is no incentive in you going to support your local club, uh, and stand no chance even if they're playing well. So it's just the system is so crude. There's also a lack of local club culture. Um, I've been 8 minutes talking about this because it's really extensive. There is also a lack of local club culture. Clubs don't seem to have that much involvement in the community, and so you know people are just not attracted to walking all the way to the stadium to watch a club that doesn't necessarily represent them in any way, shape, or form. And as a consequence of all these things, people just look outside of the country and start to find teams to support outside. And I'm pretty sure there are more factors, but those are a little bit of them. For instance, if you look at Argentina, they have many of these issues, but there is a lot of tradition in Argentinian football. And in Colombia, although it's football is probably the most practiced sport, there isn't that much of a long tradition of clubs. My grandpa was a fan of Santa Fe, and that's the reason I'm a fan of Santa Fe. Maybe that's the case for some people, but it's certainly not the case, I believe, for most people. And so, when there isn't that much of tradition, and this is something Jorge Barraza, who is a journalist, said in a in an article, in an opinion article. He said, maybe you can have all these issues, but still have people going to the stadiums if there is a tradition. And here there hasn't been the patience to build long-lasting traditions. Only few clubs have those traditions, and are the big ones. And and they are also very protected by the system, as I just explained. So yeah, there is no incentive in supporting a new club that it's probably not going to succeed anyway. And yeah, that's probably the reason why people are trying to support more European clubs and local clubs.
That is a truly outstanding insight into Colombian football, especially what you said about kids not being able to go to stadiums due to crowd trouble and violence, and not being able to wear club colours in public. I think that's a real eye-opener to us because, especially in the UK, we wouldn't think twice about wearing shirts out in public or to the shops or whatever the case may be. So I think that's a real eye-opener to us about some of the things which still go on in some parts of South America. Now, what are Colombian games like in comparison to, say, an average European game?
So here games are probably sloppier than European games. You will see some players that can't control the ball properly, or they are not necessarily they don't necessarily they maybe do amazing things when it comes to dribbling, or but they don't have the simplicity some players in Europe have. But yeah, the games are maybe a bit sloppier, so that's the bad part. But you also have more heated games, so if you like that, uh, South America is the region with the most red cards in ever, and Bedoya, a Colombian player, is the player with the most red cards ever. Sergio Ramos is not even close. He has 46 red cards. That's that's an amazing amount of red cards. And so yeah, games here are very heated sometimes. Maybe the refereeing is not that good sometimes also, because referees like to be to take attention, to drag attention to themselves sometimes. And yeah, also I believe in Colombia especially, the home and away difference is way more crucial, because well, you not only have the fans, which are crazy, and they are very important in how games develop, but also you have climate conditions, and you have the height. For instance, Bogota is 2,500 meters above the sea level, and Millonarios can be playing here today, and next day they will be playing under 30 Celsius degrees in the Colombian coast, and then they will be playing in a very humid place. Um, so I think even for instance right now that there aren't fans in the stadiums, I believe the home and away difference is still very important because it's not only that but also many factors surrounding the atmosphere as a whole. And so yeah, and well, probably the craziest match I've watched. Uh, I didn't even go to a stadium that time, but it was the final of 2017. It was Bogota Derby, Millonarios versus Santa Fe, and it was really really exciting game. There was a lot of speculation because it's the two big teams of the city, and they were going to play the final here, so people didn't really want to go out to the streets because there could be violence and all that. I don't remember anything bad happening, uh, but the game in itself was very very exciting. I remember Millonarios won. Listen, Santa Fe took the lead in the 82nd minute, so the game was 2-1 at that point, and for Millonarios to draw, it was enough, to become the champions because the first game had finished 1-0 to Millonarios, 1-0 to Millonarios, and so the game was 2-1, and in the 85th, 87th minute, this player from Millonarios made a volley and a really beautiful goal to be crowned champion. So that's probably the craziest game I've ever experienced. Even if I wasn't in the stadium, it was just beautiful, beautiful game.
Now, there's just a few things that we want to ask just before we finish up, and we haven't spoken much about Colombian players as of yet. Now, who in the country's history would you say is an absolute icon of Colombia?
So yeah, Colombian football has many icons, especially from two generations, which are the 90s generation and the 2010s generation, which is the one that is currently retiring mainly, But yeah, probably the three main icons of Colombian football and the Colombian national team are, the first one would have to be El Pibe Valderrama. Not only does he have a very identifiable brand, his hair and his mustache, which he still has today, but he was a little bit of this Colombian dream, which is the number 10, the playmaker in Colombia. We appreciate those type of players above the rest, and he was like the first one to do it very 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 well. And I believe if he played today, he would be in a big team. But he just happened to be in a time where not that many Colombians were going outside, and even when he played for Valladolid, he didn't really make it that well. Another very important player, I would say the most loved player actually by Colombian people, is Falcao. What he did at Atletico de Madrid was amazing, um, and he has succeeded in Europe. Maybe not in England. We wish he had succeeded in England, but it just didn't happen. But I think he's the example of resilience and the desire to keep going forward. The fact he recovered, and alongside many great players like Bernardo and Mbappe, he still was the captain for that league title in 2016 with Monaco, and that very good Champions League run in 2016. So he's an example for kids here, and he seems to be a very humble guy, and he's very very loved by Colombians. And what he did for the national team to take us back to a World Cup after like 16 years in 2014, that's something we will all be thankful for, and we all have memories celebrating his goals and he is a very important. He's national treasure here. And the last one is of course James. I don't think he's maybe as popular as Falcao or as El Pibe, as in they are. I don't think he's as loved uh, as them, but he's probably, if not the most talented player we've ever had, the second most, or top three most talented players we've ever had. He's so good, and yeah, I think he was the best, the Colombian player to have made it to Real Madrid. You know, there were other players at Real Madrid before, Colombian players like Edwin Congo, but he was a complete failure. So James Rodriguez, I think he was the first Colombian superstar outside of the country. As in, you know, if you look at his numbers in social media and stuff, he, you know, it's something I guess Colombia never really had in football, and you know, he is very important uh, for Colombia and the image Colombia has outside. And his World Cup in 2014 was really important. His goal against Uruguay, that's probably the most beautiful game Colombia has ever played. It's national. He's also national treasure. These three guys are national treasure, and after that you can have icons like Tino Asprilla, Higuita, Lionel Alvarez, Andres Escobar, Ivan Cordova, Mario Yepes. But I don't think they really make it to that podium of players that are like universally loved in Colombia.
Now, in England, we're very lucky that the majority of our high profile players still play in this country. How important is it to Colombia that players such as James Rodriguez and Esprilla have succeeded over here on British shores?
Yeah, it's great to have uh, players like James and Asprilla having played in England. I guess everybody will accept that the Premier League is right now the best league in the world. Uh, Although I do think that the Serie A, it's coming close, more and more close as days go by. But I mean, the Premier League is undoubtedly the best league in the world right now, and to have a player there that it's so well known like James, um, and you know, and it's actually doing very well to with Everton for Everton standards, of course. It's really amazing. Um you know, and you know, we wake up early as football fans, especially wake up early to watch his games, regardless of the rival. We like seeing James play because you know his playing style is so unique. He's very calm with the ball, and you know it's great to see him in England. You know, you can see he's the different one alongside Calvert Lewin in Everton, and you know it's really nice to see him. And you know, for Asprilla, it was similar. Yeah, I didn't leave uh, that experience, of course, but you hear people talk about waking up early to watch his games, and of course, everyone remembers his hat trick against Barca. So you know, everybody has fond memories with these players playing.
So, just to round up and finish the video, Jose, would you say that we should be watching more Colombian football?
So I don't really know if Europeans should really watch Colombian football like every weekend. But if you watch the finals, you're gonna be very, very entertained. Uh, because, as I said, maybe here it's sloppier, but the finals they can get very crazy. They can get very heated. Uh, in the finals, fans finalists are filling the stadiums, so you're gonna maybe see good atmospheres. Uh, right now, it's hard to watch Colombian football because this company tried to make it a streaming service and it hasn't really worked because people here don't really have the money to spend on like 30 streaming services, including the football one. So you know it's really hard to watch Colombian football right now. I for instance couldn't watch the last final because you know they privatized it basically, and now it's really really hard to watch it. But I most certainly would encourage them to at least read and keep an eye on the leagues down here. because it's the cradle of the future football stars. Right now, maybe these players I mentioned before, they will surprise you. They will be the stars in Europe, hopefully, and so you will be able to watch them from the beginning, to watch their whole journey. Uh, and yeah, I would definitely encourage you to, above any particular league, to watch Libertadores and Sudamericana. That's You're just gonna get a glimpse of how people understand and how people live football in these countries. Like, Sudamericana and Libertadores are really, really special tournaments. The games are very, very exciting, very entertaining. You're not watching necessarily Real Madrid, Liverpool. You're not watching Mane, Salah versus Ramos and Varane, but you are certainly going to enjoy very, very good football, very intense football, when you watch at least the continental tournaments uh, in South America. So yeah, so thank you, Regista, for inviting me to your channel. I hope you do well. I hope you keep on growing and keep up the good work to expand the world of South American football to Europeans. Bye.
So that was the first episode of Terrace Tales, and what a way to start. We've really learned a great deal into Colombian football thanks to Jose. And may I just say, Jose's English is outstanding considering he lives in Colombia and English is not his first language. So again, thank you very much, Jose, and thank you all for watching. I hope you've taken something from this chat, and as always, like, share and subscribe. See you next time.